41 people this morning at a table, and like they were firefighters, so it's fine. It's good. Their bill came out to $200.02, so we gave them a discount for everything they do. It was 10%, so it came out to $186. And
trying to follow this. She's the server. A bunch of firefighters came to the restaurant. They gave them a discount because they're firefighters. She looks like she's about ready to cry. Let's go ahead and finish up here.
Then one of the servers decided she wanted to help cover their bill, so she paid $100. So their bill came out to $86, and they left a $186 tip.
Wait a minute. So one of the other servers chipped in $100 towards their bill because they're firefighters, but they left a $186 tip. Interesting.
And my boss made me tip out the cooks, so I did.
She said tip out the cut. I think she meant to say cut out the tip. Well, you divide it up, right?
And she made me give back the $100 to one of the servers. So a shift that I wasn't even supposed to work today, I made $60 today. I hate being a server.
Ouch, folks. So times are hard for a lot of people. As you know, most people living paycheck to paycheck, barely scraping by. A lot of people can't even afford rent on their own. They have to get roommates or having to move in with their parents, things like that. Someone like this, though, that shouldn't be the case where you're working, but yet you're in tears because you didn't make as much as you thought you were going to make or as much as you need to make. Right? The whole server thing where they're splitting up the tips and then somebody else chipped in $100. So then they wanted to give that person their money back from the big tip, and then the other workers don't have enough left because the boss insisted on dividing it up. You know, that's going to happen, especially with servers. I mean, my sister worked in the serving industry for a long time, and she used to tell me some stories about how the tips got cut up, or somebody took a big tip that they shouldn't have, or someone got a big tip and they didn't split it up. There's all kinds of weird drama, weird stories behind it. But the bottom of all this, or at the base of all this, is the fact that people are so stressed out about a day at work not making enough money, or not making any money because they're unemployed, or working full time and not making enough money every day because the cost of living is too high. Folks, we're going to talk about that today. We see the economy's falling apart like never before. Consumers, the average working person, is getting more distressed and negative on the economy. We're going to talk about that towards the end of the video. But we're going to hear from a few people that are going to give their own version of what's happening here in today's economy, especially in the U.S. And we're going to break down, what some of these people are talking about here. And one of the biggest things we're seeing here is worker burnout, especially when you're working so hard, and maybe it's not physically demanding work, but it's a lot of hours and it's mentally draining. And yet at the end of the day, you're still not able to pay your bills. If you're paying your bills, you're paying down a mortgage, you're getting some long-term wealth built up, you're putting money in savings, retirement. A hard day's work doesn't feel as bad then, right? Your feet may still hurt or your head might still hurt at the end of the day, but you're building wealth. But to work hard, have a headache, be stressed out, and all these other things about your job, and to still not get anywhere and to barely scrape by, and in some cases not even scrape by, just getting further behind, that's the frustrating part. So let's hear from a few other inputs on this.
So I got home from work the other day and I laid down on the floor and I literally just thought I was going to die. And my husband, in his wonderful, loving voice, says, "Why are you so tired? You've been sitting at a desk for 8 to 10 hours. I don't get it." Not everybody will understand this, but the amount of mental exhaustion that goes into the day, back-to-back meeting, phone calls, navigating personalities, weaving through being gaslit in every different direction. And if you ask me to do one thing or make a decision, I'm going to lose my mind.
Telling you, desk jobs, just because you're sitting down all day doesn't mean it's an easy job. The companies are throwing more work at people. You're talking to angry customers if you're talking to customers, you're talking to people that a lot of times are behind on their bills and they're stressed out. So they're going to take it out on you as the phone or the person on the other end of the phone or the representative of your company. They're going to take it out on you. A lot of times they shouldn't, because it's usually not the person on the phone making the decision, unless you're talking to your landlord or something like that, where the landlord owns your home. but it's usually not the person on the phone making the decision at the company. So a company raises your cost. It's typically somebody higher up making that decision, whether it's the cost of cars, the cost of electricity. It's not the person answering the phone, I can tell you that. But people tend to take it out on the person on the phone, and it makes it a very stressful job. Even if you're just sitting in a chair for 8 hours, taking phone calls or whatever, talking to customers, even things internally within the company, you're dealing with workers that feel like they're not making enough, they're stressed out, they have a negative view, so it could be a big problem. At the end of the day, folks, things are just too expensive. The cost of living is just too high, and it causes problems in a lot of different areas. All right, listen to this one, though.
So what was the point of spending decades upgrading appliances to be more energy efficient, switching to LED bulbs, all of these initiatives to save energy when our energy costs increase substantially every single year?
Good point. Good point. Energy costs are going up. I remember decades ago, the solar calculator. Back then, with the solar calculator, 20-something years ago now, people at that time were like, wow, in 20 years, everything's going to be solar. Cars are going to be solar. No one's going to have to buy fuel. Energy is going to come down so much because solar. Well, we see solar quite a bit now, quite a lot of homes, but are these people paying less? No, they're paying more than they were back then before solar even became a mainstream thing. And that's because companies are just raising their prices. Electric companies raising their prices to compensate for the people that are saving money on using solar. So now they're just charging everybody else more. And even the people that are paying solar or paying their, not having to pay their full bill because of solar, the portion of the bill that wasn't generated from solar, what they're finding is that cost is just going up. And yes, you're still saving some money with having solar, but it's not as much as people typically had thought that they were going to save, usually. Right now, I want to shift gears a little bit here from the people that are paying the rent to someone that's charging the rent, and that's a landlord. And being a landlord, and I've been there, I've done that, it's not as simple as it may seem. People often look at the cost of rents and they say it's all greedy landlords, but landlords have expenses too, and they have things that they have to deal with. So take a listen to this short story right here on a landlord that had a tenant, and the tenant had some struggles, and the landlord tried to work with the tenant. But take a listen to this here.
Date on my tenant that I evicted after 28 years. To refresh your all's memory, I started renting to him in 1997. I have never raised his rent since. I'm talking kind of weird because I just got a new retainer today. It's making me have a lisp. Anyways, so in 2020, he fell on a little hard times with the pandemic and couldn't pay his rent. And then 2.5 years ago, he was in an accident at work and was out on workman's comp. And the deal that we made was when he got his workman's comp settlement, he would pay all his back rent. Well, 2.5 years later, he finally gets his settlement. And when it comes due to paying back rent, he decides that he's going to pay me $100 a month. We're talking 3.5.
So she was a nice landlord. A lot of bigger landlords and these big companies that have hundreds of homes, a lot of them, they will not even work with you. So this tenant's lucky to even have a landlord that would take the personal situation into consideration and work with this person.
Years of back rent that he owes. Told him that that wasn't going to work for me, and I did give him an eviction notice. I gave him 90 days to get out. He has 30 days left, but about 30 days ago, he texted me, told me that he could give me $4,000 down, and I told him
Now he came up with the money. How convenient. Some of the money, not all of it.
If he could stay, and I said no, that, I asked him for a good faith payment when he got his settlement. On top of that, when he got his settlement, he didn't even tell me he got it. I kind of noticed some different things going on, and so I had to ask him about his settlement.
So the landlord worked out a special deal on rent because this guy was injured and he was waiting for a settlement. But when he got his settlement, he didn't tell the landlord. So she thought that was kind of shady, and she's giving him the boot. She's evicting him.
If I didn't ask him, I don't think he would have paid. Well, he's still not paying. So 30 days ago, he wanted to give me $4,000, which I said no, that I asked him for that, a lump sum in good faith, when he told me he was giving me $100 a month. So I told him no, and he told me that he couldn't move because of his back injury, that he couldn't move his stuff. Well, I told him his son is more than capable of moving it for him. And then he told me he was going to take me to court for a lawful eviction. So that's where we stand next.
There you go. You're taking to court. Tenants are not honest with you. You try to help them, and it backfires. So it's not always easy being a landlord. I just want to put that out there because some people are just blaming the landlords on the high cost of rent and everything else. There's two sides to every coin, right? Also, you have to worry about the tenant trashing the place. As soon as you put in that eviction notice, the tenant finds out a lot of times they're not going to be happy and they're going to take it out on the property. And I've seen some horror stories online, and even personally, I know some people that have had some really, really bad situations where their place just gets obliterated before the tenant moves out. The security deposit's gone because the landlord will keep it, but it's usually not enough to even put a dent in the amount of damage that some of these people can do.
How are we supposed to buy a house when my rent is going up another $195 a month? It has gone up $720 in 4 years for the same place that I live in. $8,640 a year more for the same place I lived in 4 years ago. I'm sorry, property taxes are not going up that much that landlords are charging that much more. We have to stop blaming the economy, the government, the president. It is greedy people taking more profits in. When people tell you, just move somewhere else, why would I move to another state that's cheaper? Why should I have to uproot my family, lose my career, just to afford to live somewhere? You're implying people who live in where I live now don't deserve a fair shot at cost of living. And places with cheaper rent pay lower salaries. That's how this whole thing works for the most part. And my girlfriend's a teacher. Like, if she moves to a state with a cheaper cost of living, she might not even have a pension or her benefits anymore. Instead of telling the middle class to keep, looking somewhere cheaper, why don't you all align together and get people out of control that are doing this to us? You are always closer to being homeless than you are to being rich. Everyone just assumes one day they're going to get rich. And that's why they don't stand up for people just like them in the struggle right now. If not for the raise I got 4 years ago, I would be totally screwed. I don't even want a handout or help. I just want things to not be so crazy expensive every year. Go buy pizza from where I work. Go buy my merchandise. I don't know.
So he goes into pitching his whatever his business is there. Folks, it's something interesting he said. He said you're always closer to being homeless than you are to getting rich. I mean, I would say that's true for most people. And that's the other side of the coin, folks. Yeah, on one hand, you have landlords. They have their bills. They have their expenses. Then you have, on the other hand, landlords just raising the rents beyond what anything as far as inflation could actually make a reasonable rent increase, right? And landlords have other expenses. Of course, they maintain the property. Typically, maybe the renter will handle some of the repairs, but there's both sides of the coin, folks. I mean, let me know what you think about any of this down in the comments. But what we're seeing is a lot more corporate greed and a lot more landlord greed than we are seeing landlords, having problems, right? Landlord's a tough job. It's a tough thing to do, but we're seeing a lot more greed out there because landlords, I think they see the writing on the wall as well, and they're trying to get as much money as they can while times are still good. Let's get into some more recent news here. And we've got America is feeling negative. Americans have never felt this frustrated, and the frustration versus optimism chart is looking very interesting. Take a look at this. And this is visual capitalist. Frustration versus optimism. And this is 2025, how it feels so far. I believe this just came out recently, and you can see the red is the frustration, and the optimism has dropped. It bounced up and it dropped back down, but what's going up for a lot of people is the frustration part of it. That's a change of 40% since the chart started getting charted there. How far does this go back? So since the beginning of the year, a 40% drop or 40% increase in frustration, folks. That tells you what's going on with the American people for the most part. And then we had this news on the August payrolls, folks. It was terrible. 22,000 rise in payrolls in August, and that's the lowest in many years. Of course, a lot less than anyone expected. The sad part of it is that could be downward revised next month. And there's a chart here, a stat here I want to bring up for you. Since January 2023, the official jobs added number were revised negatively 24 out of 31 times. So even this awful number that we're seeing, the 22,000, that's still maybe actually too high. So pretty interesting that things may even actually be a lot worse than the numbers are telling us. So people like to hear from me on this. How are you getting by? Are you doing better? Are you doing worse? Is this much worse than you expected with the cost of living still going up? Everything becoming more expensive seemingly. Or are you someone that's not feeling this? Maybe you're going to football games. We know NFL has started again. This is the first full week of NFL games now. And stadiums are still packed. So there's still a portion of the population that's going out there that still has the extra money or still has the credit available on their credit cards to go do these things like go to football games. But remember, I think that's a very small portion of the population. If we look at the bigger part of the population, it's struggling, crying because you're not getting as big of a tip from your server job, and stress and frustration rising across the board. Let me know what you think down in the comments, everybody. As always, bye for now. See you in the next video.